Hey, it's Dave and Evelyn from the Camera Store.
Today we're taking a look at the new Sony E-mount 16-25 F2.8 G lens. This lens from Sony is a mini, kind of compact, lightweight lens. It is going to be a great pairing with the Sony A7C II. They're smaller, kind of more compact full-frame bodies. Now I'd say this focal length would be excellent for someone that's like traveling indoors. It could be a good vlogging lens, content creation, things like that. And Sony has designed this lens, they're saying, without any compromise, even though it's a G series lens, not their higher end G Master lens.
Now this is a 16-25mm lens, so it's a sort of wide and wider angle lens for a full frame body.
I believe you said it is a weird focal length. It's a little strange.
It is
strange.
But
it's designed kind of to complement their lens that they also announced earlier this year, the 24-50.
That's correct, another somewhat weird lens there.
Yeah, which we didn't really understand like what that was all about, but now it's kind of making sense. We're seeing that there's like filling in these gaps within the Sony full frame lens lineup. So we're gonna get into some of the features, the performance, how it stacks up, and also do a little bit of a comparison with the Tamron lens that is a competitor to this. Let's start talking about the build and design of this lens. So everybody's talking about how compact it is. It is pretty small. It's actually quite similar in size to the Tamron, but just a little bit smaller. So the Tamron is 420 grams, this is 409 grams. So teeny bit lighter, but when you pair it with the Sony A7C II, it does have really nice balance. So this is kind of their more compact full frame body. And we think this is a great pairing, especially again with that 24-50mm lens. You'd have a really nice kit getting you that like pretty good mid-range. Now this lens has a 67mm filter thread, again, the same as the Sony 24-50mm f2.8 lens. It has 3 control rings. So you have an aperture ring that is declickable. You also have a focus ring, and then of course the zoom ring. And then we also have a dedicated control button, so you can program that to different things. So it really doesn't have any compromise in terms of the lens features. The only thing is you don't have an aperture lock, but there's a really good click between your regular aperture settings and the auto setting if you want to adjust it in the camera. So don't have any worries about bumping that and making it kind of go out of whack. The front lens element has that Sony standard fluorine coating, which is really great for repelling oil, fingerprints, moisture, things like that. And it's also moisture and dust resistant. And then the other thing I wanted to note is with the zoom, this lens does actually extend out. Now, because it's only like a 9mm throw, it's only a tiny little bit. That is one of the many differences with this Tamron 17-28mm f2.8 lens. Now, when we reviewed this lens, I'll have to say that we loved it. It has the internal zoom, and so that's one benefit if you don't want to get grime and stuff like that in it. Dave's going to talk a little bit more about the optical quality a little bit later, but I want to talk about just some of the controls the Tamron lens doesn't have. It doesn't have a control button. It doesn't have the aperture ring. It basically just has the zoom. So it's really, really bare bones, where the Sony lens is a lot more full featured. But it's great to see that Sony is incorporating all of these different controls and customizability on their G series lenses.
Now, if we dig deeper into this lens, you're going to see that there's 16 different elements and 13 different groups making up this 9mm focal range to give us really good quality images. Now, in fact, this lens compared to the original 16-35 2.8 from Sony is better, and it's much less expensive, so it's a very worthy option to look into. Now, with this, we also have an 11-bladed circular aperture, giving us very pleasing bokeh for a 16-25 lens. Now, the images you're getting straight out of camera with this lens without any corrections at all are really, really good. But you throw in Sony's corrective behavior, like chromatic aberration correction, as well as focus breathing correction, and the images you're getting from your camera are fantastic. Now, its direct competitor, the Tamron 17-28, I reviewed several years ago, and I was really impressed with what this lens was able to come up with as far as the image quality goes. I didn't have high expectations for it, and it really surpassed those. Now, what I'm finding with this 16-25, even though it's a relatively short focal length, is I'm very impressed with what I have for such a small package. Now, however, there is the usual fall off on the extreme corners when you're at 16 and at 25, but if you stop it down a little bit, a lot of that goes away and the lens is very well controlled. I'm impressed with what Sony is able to put into this lens and the quality we're getting out of it.
One thing we haven't talked about, Dave, this lens has 2 linear motors inside of it for the focusing system, and it is designed to keep up with their latest technology, and their fastest camera, of course, being the Sony A9 III.
Yeah, now it does acquire focus very quickly. Now keep in mind we are dealing with an ultra wide angle lens, so depth of field is quite broad, so the focusing doesn't have to be quite as accurate as an 85 1.4 or something like that. So
for video and things like that, we're seeing like really smooth autofocus.
Getting
it's
at.
fast, it's quiet.
Yeah, so even though it's a big ultra wide angle lens, right, focusing is still very important, and it does have a crazy minimum focusing distance where depth of field does actually matter.
Yeah. The other thing is for video and content creators, we have really noticed a difference in terms of the breathing. So focus breathing is basically non-existent. We're not seeing a lot with this lens. And then just to top it off, with Sony cameras, they have their focus breathing correction software, which works with a selection of their lenses, including this new one. Now, if you're to use a third-party lens, of course, you don't have access to that additional tool, so you are going to have to suffer with the focus breathing if you're shooting video.
And the other thing too, if you're using third-party lenses and if you want to take advantage of the higher frame rates, some cameras are limited, right? You need to use Sony lenses to get the maximum out of your camera.
Maximum performance, maximum Sony action with their Sony lens.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, we have some fantastic options on the market. I mean, Tamron makes a very good quality lens.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the image quality I got out of this 17-28.
5 years ago, Dave was like over the moon with this. And we, to be fair, like we've been so impressed with a lot of what Tamron's coming out with for E-mount. You can save a few shekels, you know, if you want to get a lens like this.
Yeah, I mean, this was an easy recommendation for me back then. But now that Sony has this lens out here, the ability to have the extra, the aperture ring is very nice to have. The fact that it's clickable and declickable,
all the features.
The custom button, yeah, they didn't skimp on anything as far as the functionality goes.
Overall, I think if you're someone that wants a travel lens, something to shoot wider angle perspectives, you know, landscapes, cityscapes, interiors, vlogging, I think this is a really solid option. Again, I love all the features that they've incorporated into it. And, you know, we don't want to discount the Tamron lens too much because 5 years ago, it was a phenomenal lens, and you can still get a very great option for a little bit less money if you go with the Tamron. But of course, we want to know, what do you think about this lens? Is this a focal length that you're interested in? And would you like to get the G series lens with all of the features, optical performance, autofocus performance? Let us know in the comments below.
And are you already an existing Tamron 17-28 2.8 owner? And is this lens tempting you to upgrade? Make sure you follow us both on Instagram.
This has been Dave and Evelyn from the Camera Store. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll catch you again very soon.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to check out more of our recent content, click up here. And if you're a Canadian, you want to support local, check out thecamerastore.com down here.